Powerful gavel.
Kate absent.
Kate is in Turkey.
That light is so red right now. I know.
Yes.
And your chair or.
Hello, we're going to bring this meeting to order. Today is April 12th, 2023, as a regular meeting of the Delta County Planning Commission. We will begin with a roll call. I am Jacob Gray of District 3.
Tom K, District 3. Saylock, District 2.
Steve Rock, District 1.
David Merrick, District 3.
Victoria Turner, District 2.
Matt Clark, District 1, alternate. Wayne Rose, District 2, alternate. Hardy Hutto, District 2.
So, Mr. Chair, with Commissioner Queen absent from District 1, Commissioner Clark is a voting member tonight, and with Commissioner Darlington out of District 3, Commissioner Merrick is a voting member tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Item B, agendas, additions, deletions, corrections. Consider any changes to the agenda. I think out of respect to Mr. Gray, I'd like to move item D and E. We'll swap those so we can just go through the public hearing. Then we'll enter into our bylaws after that. If anyone feels otherwise, let it be known. Great. Item C, regular meeting minutes from March 22nd. Did anyone read those? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion, look for a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Great. We will move into the public hearing item PLN 2022-024 Gray.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So this item was continued from March 22nd. It's a rezone and a preliminary plat for a 6-lot subdivision off of Ute Trail Road in Cedar Edge. Excellent. So just as a refresher, the parcel is about 120 acres. It's on the north side of Ute Trail Road. There are two 60-foot access easements that access the property from Ute Trail Road. Excellent. A couple items that had come up at the last planning commission meeting. One of them was fire. We did receive comments back from the fire district. They're recommending that there would be a hydrant at the end of the cul-de-sac, which is where it connects into lot 2. They also recommended that the development, when the lots develop, that they follow the guidelines of the West Region Wildfire Council. And so staff has drafted a plat note condition 11 that there would be a plat note on the final plat relative to that, because these lots will be developed over time. Next slide. Another item that came up was relative to irrigation and water for the property. The property does have 80 shares of the Leon Lake irrigation water. The Upper Surface Creek water trades irrigation shares for water taps at 2.5 shares per tap. So for 6 lots, that would be 12.5 shares. So they do have the water necessary for the lots for the domestic water with that, and they would still have 67.5 shares left over for lot 2. Lot 2, they are not planning to develop initially. They will continue to have the irrigation on it. And therefore we felt that it would be prudent to just have a condition that they didn't need to have a tap for lot 2 at this point, if they're not looking to develop it, but if they would need to have that in place before they develop lot 2. That's condition number 12. Next slide. So again, just kind of going back through a little, just to, as a refresher, since it's been a couple of weeks, this is an aerial that shows a sketch plan back in 2022. I highlighted the lot 1 of this because showing kind of the edge of where the irrigated area is, that will be part of lot 1 and lot 2 in the proposed subdivision. You can see how the ditch lines, the blue lines run through the property. Next slide. And so this is the phase 1 of the preliminary plat, creating lot 1 in the reddish color. The remainder would be lot 2 in phase 1, that purple area. And then in phase two, next slide. The green area would be further subdivided with 4 additional lots. Lot 2 then is smaller at the end of phase 2. You can kind of see there's a green asterisk where I just put a kind of a general location of fire hydrant per the fire department's recommendation. Next slide. So this is the zoning kind of rezoning where it's currently A20. The highlighted area, the red outline area would be changed to A5. It's about 40 acres on the southern part of the property. Next slide. This is a better view of what that looks like. The zoning would not change until the final plat. So with phase 1, lot 1, that would be rezoned. And then when they come in with phase 2, the remaining lots would be rezoned. Next slide. So with that, staff is recommending that your commission consider this. We find that it does meet the requirements for a rezone. And also that it does meet the land use code standards for a preliminary plat for a 6-lot subdivision. So we are recommending approval. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, does anyone have questions for staff at this time? We'll go around. Hardy.
Not right now.
Great. Maureen.
Not yet.
No questions.
I do. I don't remember seeing under the conditions of comments regarding the fire access easement. And could we go back to that one overhead, not the one I suggested, but you got one. It's tough to see.
What's your question?
The question is the fire access easement. Whether that is in fact an encumbered easement right now to the south of this development.
It is, if you go to the next, one more. So those 2 highlighted areas where they go through basically the park parcel. Those are 2 existing 60-foot easements. They are encumbered, yes.
I mean encumbered by dwellings or other.
Oh, impacted? No, there's nothing that would restrict access through those easements at this point.
But it is not a developed easement. It's not a developed access for fire.
No, it is not.
But it's recorded.
It's a recorded
I
easement,
know,
yes.
I know. But that doesn't mean it will be developed. I mean, it's recorded, it's a paper easement. And do we in fact, as a condition, want to have a requirement that at final plat, there be a real easement access there that's drivable, usable?
That is the intent. If you want to have it more explicit in the conditions, we can certainly do that. That was the intent of highlighting that would come with phase 2, though. It would not be part of phase 1.
I understand.
Yeah.
But at some point, that would occur for phase 2. And we're sort of knocking on that door right now. If you look at it, it almost looks like there's a building on it. I can't quite tell. I was looking at the Google aerial. And the other overhead that we have is not really. Can you go back to that? I can't point it out from here, but it sure is jammed up where that city water line comes down and joins through this easement next to the buildings on that property. I don't know whose property that is, but I just want to make sure that there's in fact a real easement there at some point in time.
You mean, well, when you say a real easement, you mean an improved access,
Approved
emergency access, right?
emergency access.
Okay.
I have a question. Can they not just use the other access? The other yellow outline?
They can. The idea though is when you have that length of a road in rural areas to have a secondary access. The land use code doesn't require secondary access until you have 8 lots. Here we have 6, but we also have lots down below that are utilizing those easements. So that's where, in conversation with the county engineer, we thought having that secondary emergency access in place would be prudent in this case. So for example, say the one access gets blocked, there's still a secondary access for those parcels, for the people to get out in an emergency.
It's a high fire danger.
But it's already there in the first subdivision that occurred.
The easement is the one on the left has been improved because the parcels, the lower parcels, that's what they use to get in, and that's the main access. So that's why that's the access that's being proposed as being improved with phase 1. The other one is not improved at this juncture. It's just an easement.
But it's an easement that was put in during the original development of those existing lots.
Right, when the original, that lower subdivision was done, Timberline.
Yeah, I think we can add that as a condition that to get developed.
Aren't you gonna have to specify what development means to some kind of county road standard, or, I mean, just to say it's developed, does that mean just knock down the brush or put some gravel down? I think it makes a big difference when you say developed. I don't, suggestion would be, I don't have a suggestion, but
Sure.
I've seen this done before, and we required, in my other experience, a certain level of county road development in order to, that was what improved meant.
Yeah. But if you're running utilities, sometimes you're getting the cart before the horse. If you start building roads before you even, I don't know what's going in there, but they might be running it side of the road or in the road. Or, so I mean, I don't know. It needs to be cleared, but I don't think we should go too crazy on at this point.
I think Steve's concern is that you have a level, that there's an easement, but there's a way that people can actually use
Yeah, I
it.
think dirt, something leveled out to drive down through there, but we'd rather be specking out any roads on the deal.
When we had the Brown subdivision off of LJ Road, they had an emergency access and it was agreed that it could be a dirt road. It didn't need to be a fully improved county road, as long as it was passable.
Because there's a lot of work going in there.
Right, it should be minimal cost to the people since it's just emergency access, but passable for, 12 feet wide and there you go. Dirt path, but
I don't want to preempt anybody else.
Yeah, Steve, are you done?
No, I think David made a good point. I mean, there should be some definitive standard. We can ask Mr. Gray if that's maybe an access for utilities or something, when they have plans going that direction. That may be a factor in this.
Sure.
Maybe I can, so the primary access, which will calls out for a proposed 10-foot utility easement on the plat. It does not call for it out in the fire easement. So there no, based on this, there's no intention for utilities to be in there.
This is Kurt Gray. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
you're
well,
ready for the applicant.
okay, sure.
I'm filling in for my dad, John. He's having technical difficulties with his computer right now. So to answer some of your questions, the utilities are planned to be across or along the edge of the primary axis, which is the most westerly as it's depicted on the map there. The fire easement is there specifically only for fire access. It will be developed to the extent that it needs to be, if that is required of the fire marshal, and we are not intending to put any utilities along that right of way or that easement for the fire access. It'll just be there purely as a fire access.
You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
He said
thank you.
Kurt Gray.
Oh,
That was
that's
Kurt
It's
Gray.
great, it's Kurt.
Yeah, I'm John's son, Kurt.
Okay. Is there any other questions for staff? Kate?
yeah, so the fire hydrant, Cedar Fire Marshal is recommending a hydrant up there, but didn't we find out that there's a hydrant less than 1,000 feet away at the base of this, at the road intersection there?
Kate, you did that research.
I mean, that's what the GIS maps are showing, but I don't know how accurate that information is, and the fire marshal didn't make any comment to that. I can certainly follow up on that.
Maybe it's a question for Mr. Gray. That great.
Because is it coming off a 6-inch line there? Is he gonna have to run a 6-inch line all the way up to a hydrant? That's a considerable expense.
Would assume they'll catch that line coming down.
Is that the same water districts that's serving with that? Is that the line that would come off?
Yeah, that water line easement is for Upper Surface Creek in the town of Cedar Edge. And they do have a 6-inch line in that, within that easement.
So,
It's actually a 12-inch and a 6-inch. The city of Cedar Edge has a 12-inch water main, and then right adjacent to that is Upper Surface Creek's 6-inch water main.
so I'm not sure that, how much thought goes into the fire department saying, yeah, let's throw a hydrant up there, because they're expensive. If there's one located nearby already, and if it's not necessarily required in the land use code. So, Hardy probably has some thoughts on that, and you know my thought. So, I don't know that, we should
Why
make
don't you tell the rest of us your thoughts?
the hydrant.
My thoughts are you folks just passed a 3-lot subdivision and there was a hydrant within probably 100 feet of the property. And you made the applicants put in another one. And that's a 3-lot subdivision, 100 feet away. So you kind of set a precedence of what you should be doing right now. On that, be my guess. I don't.
If I recall that project, it was the reasoning for the fire department was because of the accessibility of the fire hydrant, even though it was just across the street. So, the fire departments are asked to look at that, and the standard is 1,000 feet from a hydrant. But it's not just as the crow flies, it depends on how
Sure.
accessible it is. So,
So I don't know, whether that should be a condition of approval or not. It's just
We're probably looking at the future, I would assume if they don't do it now, they'll make them do it later for sure. When they do this, if they go on through, and then there might be a problem getting across to get at it, may not be a problem. I don't know.
Hear from the applicant, Mr. Gray, do you?
Hang on, any more for staff? No more for staff.
That's all I have.
Cindy, I'm sorry, I didn't let you introduce yourself. Do you have any questions for staff at this time?
No, I do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Now, yeah, let's go to, it's Kurt Gray. If you have any other information to give to us pending this application to enlighten us on any of the questions you've heard or any information that we're needing from you, now would be a good time.
Okay, I apologize for interjecting there. I thought I was being helpful.
Okay.
So regarding the fire hydrant, I'm a little bit fuzzy on that. So in addition to the fire hydrant that currently exists, we're talking about adding an additional fire hydrant. Is that correct?
that was the recommendation of the fire department, yes.
Oh, okay, I understand. Okay, no, everything sounded great then. Appreciate the information.
Okay, so questions for the applicant? You want to start, TK?
Sure, so Kurt, you're not familiar with any other hydrants within 1,000 feet of, say, where that cul-de-sac is, the very end of the primary road?
That would be relatively adjacent to our property. The only one I'm aware of is the one that is at the end of that westerly road between the Brantleys and the Herreras there. But beyond that, I'm not sure if there's any that are in close proximity to our property, just not actually on or near our property.
And I don't know if you can, is this screen shared? The fire department's put or maybe Carl has put an asterisk at the end of the cul-de-sac. So it technically would be on what will be the final lot 2 as a location for a fire hydrant.
Okay,
I just want to make sure that's what's being requested by the fire department and make sure you have a chance to make, if you don't think it's necessary because there's something else, now would be the time to speak.
okay, I understand. Yeah, I do see the green asterisk, and that was not something that was mentioned to us prior. So this is a new concept or information to us. I'd have to talk it over with my father as far as whether he thinks he's kind of taken the lead on engineering and designing this subdivision with my assistant. So without him actually being with us here through the audio, I'd have to talk to him separate on the phone and see what his thoughts are on that.
Okay, so just for clarification, whatever we approve here also gets moved on, if we approve it, or whatever we decide here moves on to the Board of County Commissioners, you'd have another chance to review it then.
Okay, I understand. That's
If you have me
perfect.
Today, you may have another shot.
Sure, I understand. Okay, that sounds great.
The only other comment I had were in the conditions of approval, 4, 5, 7, and 8 required each water service with each lot, and then it talked about electric service to each lot, OWTS on each lot. Why are we going to require the final lot 2 to have all those requirements?
No, that was the idea of condition 12, since they are not developing it. That there would be a plat note that prior to development, they need to have the water tap and that type of stuff.
Okay, I'd like to make sure we refine our conditions to represent that, so that someone's not reading each lot. It can be an asterisk that says excluding final lot 2, just so that
I see.
there isn't any confusion here. I know lot 12 does it, but that sort of contradicts what's said before.
Okay.
That was all I had for this.
Tate?
So is there a water tap being required for lot 2 as well? The lot that's not being developed?
Can be built on.
It, as the fact that it's still a large lot will be used for agriculture. We're not requiring a tap at this time, but we have the plat note that in the future, if they develop it, they will need to have a water tap. And they've provided proof that they were able to get that water tap because they had the shares to be able to get that.
Okay. Water tap or well?
Or well, or whatever, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
But I
Domestic
understand
water.
that there's a plat note that says they're not developing.
Is developing.
At this
putting
time.
it up, or is that like building on?
Building on it.
So they're not building on
So they're putting a plat note that says we're not gonna build on it. And I'm saying, okay, if you're gonna put that plat note, we shouldn't make you put in OWTS, water tap, or anything else. If you're gonna build on
I
it,
agree.
you'll have to come back and revise your plat, and then it all gets reviewed again. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Right.
Okay,
I'm good, thanks.
Mr. Sherrock?
It sounds like there was doubt about whether it would require fire hydrant.
Hmm.
And I would just suggest to you all that we, I don't know that we're required, but we better listen to the fire department when they make recommendations.
David?
I don't have anything.
Maureen?
I'm just gonna agree that it seems like it's a bit premature for a fire hydrant. Especially if it's not required with this amount of lots. And if the owner of the property, when he's able to speak, decides that he doesn't feel it's necessary, I just don't think we should have it as a condition. And then also, so when we're approving this plat, we're approving just the subdividing of the lots, but not any actual development on the lots.
That's correct.
So that's what they'll have 2 years to complete, is just subdividing the land.
Subdividing the land and preparing the lots for future development, access, water taps,
putting in all the
electricity.
utilities.
Yeah, the infrastructure.
I would say, if, it may not be necessary at this moment to have a fire hydrant up there, but it would be better to put the pipe in now rather than go back and tear the road back up. That's just my thought. Unless they never plan on doing anything up there.
I would love to have a location like marked on here where the other hydrant is at.
And what's that, 500 feet? If that?
I mean, I can roughly measure, but I don't, my aerial imagery doesn't really match
Mhm.
the design of that cul-de-sac, so I can't give you an exact measurement.
Well, if that's it, and then I'd like to touch on, I don't know if this is the time or place, this 1,000-foot rule.
Mhm.
Is this, there's just so much gray area there, and then I'm hearing like, there's so many lots, it has to have one, or it doesn't have to have one. You say not by the way a crow flies, but up the road, direct access. I think we need to iron that out for future applicants of exactly how that works.
We're relying on the fire district. We're not
So
fire
every
experts
Fire
here.
marshal from every different district has a total different option, like Delta, they don't even show up, obviously. You know, up there, they're a little more on point because it's a major wildfire district. I mean, it's a total different animal. They don't live here, so.
Which kind of makes sense. I mean, as the service people, you know, maybe they don't have that much line and they want to require more stringent.
Yeah, I agree. But, you know, on 500-foot, there's, you know, they're saying to put one in and the requirements say they don't have to. So we're kind of in a bind here. Do we go against them or do we press this guy to put in a 6-inch line? You know, it's probably a pretty good chunk of money.
I mean, we could keep it as a condition, and if he's able to bring measurements to the county commissioners, they could
Yes.
easily make that decision, because it looks like it's more than 500 foot to me. It's near that 1,000-foot mark,
It's-
but
And it's straight uphill.
And I think you're trying to anticipate where structures might be built.
So he acknowledges that if he does build it all out and then he does something else, he's gonna tear all that up probably to get it tied in.
I mean, if you look at just the road distances, it's right at that 1,000 foot or more than 1,000 foot mark. So actually,
Just
so maybe, you know, if the applicant can
Yeah.
bring some measurements or to the county commissioners, that would make
Right.
sense. Argue to pull that back.
Do you have anything else, Arden?
Well, that's it. I just don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, it is a wildfire area right there for sure, so. If the applicant agreed that he put it in, I think it'd be better.
Cindy, do you have any questions for the applicant?
My only question is, I just want to make sure if I'm understanding this, on that lot 2, that 67.5 acres is going to remain in a trust for agriculture. Do they have the right to come back to request a re-subdivision on that? Or is that actually just going to remain in the trust, Mr. Chair?
It's owned by a trust, but it is not under like a stewardship area. This isn't a clustered subdivision, so there's no requirement to put it into any type of easement or restricted use. So lot 2 effectively could be re-subdivided later.
Okay, that answers my question. And it looks like with that 67.5 acres, or excuse me, we have 67.5 water shares for that 76 acres, correct?
Correct. Once the taps are allocated to the other lots, yes.
Okay. Okay, that was my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So at this time, is there anybody from the public that wants to speak on this matter? Okay. Oh. Are you here to speak on this public hearing, sir?
Potentially.
Okay,
I don't know if he's talking, I think he may be talking about the bylaws.
okay.
Guys, I don't want to interrupt, but Jacob, if you could pull that mic closer to you, because I can.
Thank you. I can't hear
Sorry.
you. Thank you.
Okay. So at this time, I think we'll close the public comment, seeing none on the gray rezone.
Since the irrigation was staying with lot 2, we didn't.
Is there any comments online?
Oh, yeah, are there any other folks online? Just the grays. Okay, yeah, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to the table. How do we want to go about this? How do we feel about this? Want to go condition by condition, vote on them? Okay, you want to start with the hydrant? Is that in the previous conditions, the fire hydrant?
The previous, well, it's in the staff report for now, but the mitigation was a question the last time we were here because we had not received comments from the fire district at that time. I will note that if your commission wants to say, you know, a hydrant may be required. If a hydrant's not required, then we do have the fire mitigation fee that is usually applied to subdivisions, which is a $500 per lot. I would not suggest having the fee and the hydrant, but one or the other, if that's your choice.
Why couldn't the fee be applied to the hydrant?
Well, because there may not be any additional fee and that hydrant will never get installed based on experience. That's happened on quite a few subdivisions in the past.
The hydrant's gonna cost-
We've had multiple escrow accounts with funds that never finished having the funding and just sat there for 20 years. And the hydrant never got installed. The subdivision got completed.
So do we want a hydrant? Do we want-
I'd like to make a recommendation to put in the hydrant, just because I know the area. And I think it's wise.
It does seem, without the exact distances, it doesn't seem wise to go against the recommendation. Fire marshal, Steve. Yeah.
I think-
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman,
Yeah.
I would make a motion that we have it as a condition if it is further than 1,000 feet that are required by the land code.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Do we like that? Or do we just want to see it?
I would, Mr. Chair, I would like to know why the fire folks decided that there had to be a hydrant there. There must be something mitigating that. Why it has to be there if it's within 1,000 feet or beyond. So I would defer to what their professional advice is on that.
Okay. Didn't hear a second. Do you want to put yours in motion, your recommendation that we put it?
in motion.
Do we have a second for Hardy?
The motion being,
Can we,
To install the hydrant where the fire marshal.
are we making a motion to approve this based on that?
No,
or we're
just
talking
for
about
the-
fire hydrant?
Just for the condition.
as a condition.
Yeah.
I'd second that.
Any more discussion around this?
I'm real familiar with the area too, but there's a potential for wildlife fire up there is very great.
Yeah.
So just for information, FYI, I think it's a good idea.
All those in favor of adding this condition, putting a fire hydrant where we have the green asterisks, please say aye. All those opposed? Okay, that's the first condition. What else do we have?
Just to clarify, because you didn't address fees, it's a fire hydrant in lieu of fees.
Yes, for sure. No fees.
It wasn't part of the motion, but I just
No.
want to make sure, because I think that's what he intended.
Yeah.
Anybody, any object to that, and he's not gonna have to pay $500 a lot plus,
Right.
just, it came up. Just
Good to
wanna make
know,
sure we're
yeah.
clear. No fees.
So the rest of the conditions we could probably include in the.
In the motion, yeah. Were there any extra ones that we had from tonight? You talked about an easement being developed.
The emergency access.
Emergency, you just want to make sure the emergency access is put in.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there should be a condition that says that final, there is a legitimate physical access, usable fire access on that route. David's comment about being specific about it, I sort of like. I can't remember what we did in that one subdivision. I sort of thought we were being more specific than just saying it was dirt. But maybe not.
Do you remember what we did with Cody's?
No, but I can-
I think it was just, we didn't require, I don't think we required road base or anything.
Right.
It was just drivable.
So is this intended only for that? Like they can't use both until they go further, or, as like just access?
Right, it's an emergency
It's
access.
an emergency access.
So if we gravel it and make it, and then we start running both roads,
Right, that's
it's
how
kind
it
of
is.
one of those deals where that's why I say we go dirt, make it something you drive down, but it's for emergency access, and that's it. And then when they go further, make it an actual access.
Does the engineer have a emergency access standard?
No,
That's what we
the,
ran across.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Cody last.
the current road standards do not have anything for an emergency access.
Would that road be designated for emergency use only, or can the public go up and down it when they want?
Well, if you gravel.
Well, I think it really is intended for emergency purposes only. If they wanted to block it off on one end, but where only, in an emergency it would be opened up. That's what we also, I think, discussed in that Brown subdivision, was he was going to have that so people didn't use that as a day-to-day access.
Yeah, I think it should just be, the emergency access should just be drivable. Would be the
Yeah,
condition.
that's
And I guess I was gonna say, allow vehicular access or passable with a vehicle would be probably sufficient.
That's right.
So the condition for Brown wasn't specific, but the plat note said the emergency access is to be utilized only in the event that the main access road is blocked or otherwise inhibited. So, I mean, a plat note could be,
We could add a similar plat note if that's part of the motion. We could add that as another condition.
So I'd make a motion to approve the subdivision. Yeah, 22024 Gray.
All these ones
With staff conditions and in the additional condition of a accessible, drivable, emergency access only.
That's a motion. We have a second for that motion.
I'll second that.
So in the discussion, if anyone feels that there needs to be anything more, we can add it to it. We'll go around though. If you have any discussion on this motion. Speaking now for Roger, please.
I'm good. I'm good, as long as the notes we made on the approval, as noted regarding each lot, what I made earlier, I want to separate lot 2 ultimately in phase 2, so that it's not included in each lot. We approved the conditions, and I just didn't like the way the conditions were written. As long as we clarify that for the applicant, that he's not required to put in on-site wastewater or water tap, all the things that we're requiring on the other lots, I'm okay.
That seems, I mean,
Yeah.
Kate, you got that, it's kind of that technical.
Yeah, this is a clerical thing.
Clerical.
Approving the minutes, we're approving the conditions. I just want to make sure, we discussed that earlier, and everybody seemed great, so.
Yeah.
Could we go over the conditions?
I could run through them. Yeah,
I'd like to see them again since we're talking about it.
sure. Could we pull those up? They're in the packet. But you might not have the packet up.
you can pull it up, just give her a second.
Okay.
I like to remember that.
I'll start while we're waiting. It basically says, phase 1 improvements will be, condition 1, phase 1 improvements is completed and final plat submitted within 1 year. Phase 2 improvements must be completed within 2 years. Timing for completion of public improvements can be deferred subject to the SIA. And that's, do you have it up? I'm gonna stop.
That's really,
You guys can read it for yourselves.
Will there be an SIA? subdivision?
That's up to the applicant. It's their choice whether or not they want to or need to. It's a matter of how they want to finance, or they just want to,
Right.
So, we're not doing we're just working on the first section of this right now, not the ones that are over closer to the creek.
No, this is for two phases, so it's the whole thing, but in two phases.
Building envelopes or anything like that, staying away from that.
We have not included or recommended building envelopes in this case.
Yeah, I don't think,
It's pretty limited to where the building can occur with the way the lots are designed.
with our current flooding situation, I guess someone can use their own brain on the building.
So TK, what you're saying on 4, water service shall be established and installed prior to the final plat, you're saying you don't want that condition?
Well, it says water service shall be established, and installed prior to the second and final plat for each lot. And lot 2 is not.
Oh, right.
So I'm just
Okay.
saying, each time it says each lot, I want to put an asterisk
Specify.
and say excluding lot 2
Yeah, okay,
in the final phase 2,
good catch.
which is what number 12 does.
Mhm.
But
Right, it doesn't change the
just a little bit-
context,
little
just how,
confusing.
making it more clear.
That would be for 5 as well. isn't it?
Yeah, there was a couple of them. I don't have them anymore. I lent it to Steve.
Steve, do you have any comment?
I'm still reading.
David, do you have anything? We'll come back to
I don't have any
Steve.
comments on the conditions. I'm just questioning procedurally, shouldn't the motion include the rezoning and approval of the sketch plan?
We're approving phase 1 and phase 2, and the phase 2 is the reason.
Well, it's a separate action. Rezoning is a legislative action. The preliminary plat was a judicial action, so it would we're actually two separate actions, so it should be part of the motion, yes.
Or do you
Separate
rezone first and then?
It's a, you can take them separately or you can take it all together.
Yeah. So at this point, we should just take it separately since I made clean that.
That's fine. Okay. This is for the subdivision. Victoria,
Yeah, I'm just, we're not at the motion for the. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that motion, I would like to amend it to include our comment about consistency with county master plan, 2018 master plan. That we find this development, this proposal is consistent with our master plan.
could we do that as a friendly amendment? Are you guys opposed to that?
That's what it always do.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep. We can add that. Victoria, do you have any?
Can you see the other 6 and beyond?
Can we scroll down there, Kate?
Applies to number 8 as well.
Yeah.
7, 8, 4, and 5.
Mhm. We ready to vote? Great. All those in favor of the motion? This is just for the subdivision. Please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so now we would need a motion for the rezone.
I'd make a motion to approve the rezone.
I'll second.
Motion by Victoria, second by TK. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay, Mr. Gray, another Mr. Gray, you'll have a meeting with the Board of County Commissioners. And we'll get you moving. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we're gonna move on to what was prior D, our bylaws. I think we did receive some written comment from the public. Put this out to the commission. Would we want to hear from the public prior to going over our bylaws? Just kind of hear them out.
I would,
Okay. If anyone at this time would like to speak, I think we're going to keep it to 3 minutes, but if anyone wants to speak on anything you'd like us to keep in mind as we go over these bylaws. It's probably going to take us more than one meeting. Looking at probably an hour, hour and a half to go over it. In this meeting, we'll see how far we get. We'll go line by line and we'll go from there. So. Is everyone signed up? Okay. Can't quite read these. Who would like to speak in regards to the bylaws? Just please come forward, sit at the chair. We'll give you 3 minutes and
Okay,
come on up.
I've been in Ireland for a month, so I've been following all of this though. Watch the meeting with
Please
me.
introduce yourself.
Pamela Jackson Paonia.
Thank you.
I really think that it's not cool to change the bylaws just because we've brought up issues that are with the bylaws. I think all of you guys are working really hard to take care of a lot of things that Delta County needs, but as far as just having a meeting and saying, we're just gonna change the bylaws because then we'll be legal, that's not cool. And I really feel like everyone on this planning commission, maybe except for 1 or 2, should be from unincorporated Delta County, because these laws are gonna govern us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela.
Hi, everybody. I'm Evelina Baida. I live in Crawford. And I put in my more extensive detailed comments, and I just wanted to stress that, and I think Mr. Holm also mentioned that the bylaws are to specify things more to cater to our specific community. And I think it's really important to make it identifying us in some ways. And I think you have a lot of power here. And I hope you can make it so we can be proud of our own community and make it in a way, the rules should be in a way that could give us back the power to actually see what happens in the communities, and that the neighbors can actually have some say in what happens, that we're not just following the laws per se, but we can actually maintain the neighborhood's nature. And I think the rules that you can, the bylaws that you can create can actually enforce that. And this is not something that the statute prevents. I think it actually allows a lot to make a lot more detailed rules as far as the bylaws. So I just wanted to say that. And I think you should really think about the future of the county. And I think if the municipalities are going to grow more and maybe more people are going to come to the townships, that should also be regulated, who can be on the planning commission, because you're going to have more and more people living in the townships. And I think what Pamela was saying is true. You are making decisions and recommendations for the non-incorporated Delta County. So if you do want to allow some people from townships, there should be some kind of regulations as how many people can be on the commission. I think that should be regulated and not left open. And there's a lot more things there, in light of the recent criticism of the planning commission member, Victoria Turner. I think there should be more specific, maybe reasons why somebody should be dismissed from the planning commission. I think not being at the meetings and non-performance maybe should be clarified a little bit more, not just because somebody is speaking up and actually bringing to attention of the public and the other planning commission members things that are not aligned with the bylaws. I think that should be also specified, that not just because somebody brings up criticism, that's the reason for dismissal.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Paul Johnson Hotchkiss. It seems like since I moved to Delta County, I'm at these meetings more than I've been in my entire life. And the message for myself to the commission or anybody in some sort of service position, not authoritarian position, is to serve the community and the people. Excuse me, and I was thinking about this today, like, it's like this unwritten elementary law to not change the rules in the middle of the game to suit yourself to win what you want. So I don't really know much about other than I read in the High Country Shopper what Victoria shared with me, but represent the people. Hear the voice of the people. They want to be heard and represented respectfully. So thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Hi, Chuck Sherrick, I live on 2000 Road. I'd like to commend you guys for all of your service. I've been kind of listening remotely. There's a couple things that I think would help a little bit. When you're making this voting, maybe you could just do it by a ballot box, because it seems like you guys gang up on somebody and target them a little bit and they get intimidated. And while everybody has some good ideas, I notice that sometimes they're driven by hierarchy. Would that be a good word? So I think if we went to like a ballot box and our noise is getting a little better, we can hear, but it's still really, and I was sitting in the corner so I could hear better. It's really kind of a strain to pick out all the voices and who's talking. I know that it's tough to speak into the mic. Maybe there's a better directional mic we could get. The wish come true thing is kind of, there's more and more people here. We all have ideas. Some are great, some aren't so great. And everybody puts a lot of work into this whole thing. So if we could utilize it and learn from each other's mistakes. It's hard to read the minutes because they're coming out pretty slow, guys. Especially if you're not there, to know exactly what's going on. If you can't meet the meeting, sometimes you have to wait 2-3 weeks. By then there's another meeting. So you're kind of caught in a quagmire. I don't mean to diss anybody, but those are just my observations. The last thing I'd like to say is, it appears that sometimes the decisions are made by law, but not by what's best for the community. And everything has to be looked at with a grain of salt for the areas. We're getting more and more subdivisions. And everybody, wanks about moving a fire hydrant 500 foot or 1,000 foot. But when there's a fire, if you have a dirt lane, you got trouble, because if it's wet, one truck drops and that's the end of that show. So now you've got everybody scurrying around. You put 2 or 3 lines on a 6-inch line and you'll collapse it from suction. So these are all things that Carl's kind of on top of, but they change on a let's say an application by application basis. That's the end of my 3 minutes. That's what I had to say. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Please introduce yourself.
Daniel Kennedy, Delta County. I think people who live in city should deal with the city, and people who live in the county should be in the county. Some of us live in the county because we like the county because it's generally a bit more free. I have a brief anecdote from a few months ago. I have a Pomeranian Sheltie mix, and he's a small little dog, and I got a citation for him being out of my control. He was roaming the grass in town, and I got a ticket, and I was late to pay my ticket, and I almost got an arrest warrant for myself over my Pomeranian, which would have made me unhappy to end up in jail over my 17-year-old dog.
That today?
That was a couple months ago.
Oh, my wife was chasing a Pomeranian today.
He's been on the job site, different story. It's a long way of saying city, city, county, county. So I think we can all understand that one. One final comment, someday I will be an older white man and very successful, and we have a lot of, I don't know the best way to say it, older white men in government and in the planning commission and so on. And I think when we have the opportunity to have a younger white woman, we should do our best to encourage the youth to participate, because I don't want to participate in any form of government. And the reason is I just am not interested. But I find it very awesome when our younger generation wants to participate. And so I think we should be encouraging when people want to be doing that, such as Victoria. And so I find it somewhere between tragic and would make me angry when basically someone would be ganged up upon for bringing something new to the table. And so I just want us all to respect that people like me and business owners and community members, we want to be a part of our county. We want to like participate, make this county great. And we're not always older white people or black people. Yeah, maybe I want to identify as a different gender, color later in life, but we do want to participate. And so we definitely want the younger voices to be heard. 3 minutes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Why not, right? Brian Hollis of Hotchkiss. So I know there was a whole deal with, I don't know which, I wasn't present, but here's how the story played out in my head. Someone in the commission was chairperson, their term reached the end, and then they had their term limit, but since no one stood up, they were elected again for reterm out of rules of bylaw. From when I've used Robert rules or certain rules of that sort, if someone's term is to end and the bylaw is that you are not to be re-elected because your term has a duration, we don't just fill that in the need. That position remains open until someone steps up. So it gives a spirit of rotation. And if no one stands for that position, it's not going to function as well. But we have to wait for then maybe someone in the minority will want to stand for that position. So not just filling positions out of need with people that aren't eligible, but leaving that open so someone can stand. Yeah, that's it. Good, great.
Thanks, Brian. Okay. Last call. Okay, this time we'll close the public comment. Thank you, everybody, for that. Now we'll look at our bylaws. Like I said, I think this is going to take us a little while. There's a lot of red lines. So I think essentially what Carl did was compile all of our comments and what he's heard over the time. I say we just go line by line and I'll kind of turn it over to Carl. We'll try to, you know, if something piques your interest or you don't feel right about something or you want to strike something, you know, speak up. I don't want to necessarily have to go around the table over and over for every single red line, but let's just be respectful of each other. And if there's discussion to be had, let's have some healthy, respectful discussion.
Okay, so I was attempting to try to collect all the commissioners' comments. I did receive comments from all the commissioners, some in red line, some in comment form. Hopefully I've captured everything as you anticipated. There was a lot of commonality, so there may be a little bit different wording than what you had submitted, but hopefully I've captured everything. These bylaws were initially adopted in 2019. So some of the edits in here are reflective of there is now a land use code, and the land use code is the Board of County Commissioners policy. And so where there was previously bylaws, now there is a land use code. the planning commission doesn't dictate to the board dictates to the planning commission. So in those cases, I have recommended some changes that would leave it to the land use code rather than having something conflict with what the board's policy is. Other than that, the bylaws are your bylaws. It's how you want to outline how you want to run your meetings, the order of conduct. They are not required, but they certainly do have a value as far as how you want to operate and run your business. So with that, the first part, the authority is citation from statute effectively. There is one additional phrase in there that was not included that is actually in the statute, and that is as it may consider necessary and advisable. So that just brings it in alignment with the statute. There was a comment to include language relative to complying with the Colorado Constitution, Article 29. I added that down into section 2. I thought if that's the desire of the commission, that would be a appropriate location to put that. The rest of section 2 is really cleaning it up. Again, we have a land use code now. We don't have specific development regulations. So it was really more minor edits to bring it in line with that. So with that, maybe I'll stop with sections 1 and 2, or you want me to finish with this page? The only other edit was instead of the staff, just staff.
Sure.
I go on.
Keep going. Yeah.
Keep going?
We'll just speak up when.
Okay. Section 5, the member duties, section 5.1 is stricken out because the land use code, chapter 1, section 6D2A, it does address the composition of the planning commission, and that is the board's authority for appointing planning commissioners. 5.2, which would become 5.1, is the associate members are also addressed in the land use code. However, in the bylaws, it does go to more detail as far as how the associate members act within the commission. And therefore, there's some amendment to remove what's covered in the land use code, but there are also some edits relative to having some additional detail. I think the main change is associate members may participate in discussion and may ask questions, but will not be part of any motion or vote except as allowed in the bylaws. And that's effectively how it's functioning, but there will be some later edits relative to potential opportunity for associate members to participate. Yes.
So we've had a number of public comments on the membership, and I think maybe we should just discuss that if we have a chance.
Sure.
So the land use code just says each member of the planning commission shall be a resident of the county. Exclude people from the incorporated areas. The land use code says that each member of the planning commission shall be resident of the county. Doesn't exclude anybody who's in the unincorporated or unincorporated. So it allows the Board of County Commissioners to choose a member from wherever they are in the county, and the county attorney has determined that even if you live in the municipality, you're part of the county. We've heard a lot of comments tonight about people thinking if you live in the incorporated areas, Hotchkiss, Cedar Edge, Crawford, Paonia, you should be excluded from serving on the planning commission board. My personal opinion is I disagree. I think it doesn't bother me if you live within the municipality at all. I think the view here is on the master plan. The master plan serves everybody municipal as well. And if you wanted to serve on both, meaning your town planning commission, I don't even think it would be a conflict. So those are my thoughts in terms of membership of the members. That's what's open on this discussion.
I'd like to touch on that. I'm with you on that one. I don't think it should matter if you live in the city or the county. I think you're in Delta County. But just like what you just said, if you wanted to serve on both, that's where I get the hardship. Right now, city of Cedar Edge, just because that's my district, you can't vote city of Cedar Edge. You can't sit on the planning commission, you can't sit on a board. So with these intergovernmental agreements we've got going on, I think we're kind of getting the short end of the stick. I think the gate should swing both ways. I don't know how it's done or how it works, but it shouldn't be one way down here and then stay out of here up there. So I'd like to look at that.
And we could add that as a condition in our bylaws that says you can serve on either or, but not both,
Should be able to.
right?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't have a problem.
I'm saying you should be able to.
Yeah, like if you live in the county, you know, like you live like just outside of the county in Cedar Edge, you should be able to have a say in the city, what's going on up there, especially if you.
Well,
especially if
honestly,
you
it
own
doesn't
property
really,
in there.
it doesn't really matter what we think,
Why
because
doesn't
it's
it
up to the county commissioners. No, it's up to the county commissioners. We can't dictate, the membership to the county commissioners.
If you own property.
We're
in
all
that
under
city,
state
you're
citizen,
resident
right?
outside, You can't vote in the city of Cedar Edge. Right.
So
Why would that be? We're talking.
I'll defer to David.
David,
Your question is, if you live in the county, you think you should be able to serve on a municipal
I'm
planning
saying,
commission?
say you own 10 pieces of ground in the city of Cedar Edge, but you can't vote, you can't be part of any of their meetings, anything, because you're a resident of McDowell County. So
That's a function of the municipal code.
why is that? Why is it?
Well, that's because it's different, there's statutory cities, there's home rule cities.
Yeah.
Mountain Village and Telluride, because they have a high volume of out-of-state, out-of-town residents, their home rule charter says that if you own property in the town, you can serve and vote.
There you go.
But that's just Mountain Village, so they
That's
all
what I'm
vary.
saying. What we should maybe touch on that.
But we can't determine what the municipalities do.
No, we
right,
can't.
that's up to
That's
the
all,
county.
that's what you're,
But we also, sorry to interrupt, we can't determine this anyway, because it's up to the county commissioners.
That was my comment, was that, bylaws pertain to how we run our meetings. The appointment by the Board of County Commissioners really has nothing to do with how we run our meetings.
Right, so if people have comments about members being from certain areas, take it up with the county commissioners. We don't have a say in it.
Mr. Chair, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. The Colorado Code simply states resident of the county. The county commissioners are elected by the populace of the county. They answer to the people. So we're an extension of them. And we should not be restricted on who can sit on this planning commission. Should be every member in the county should have an opportunity to sit here. What cities and municipalities do, they have to elect their own mayors, and they have charge over that through the electoral process.
so just to get you feel it. You're clear. It was real well put.
Victoria?
That if you're a vote, you should be able to serve.
Right.
So incorporated, unincorporated makes them do it. Okay, thanks.
So my say on this is that there are other counties, as we all read in the comment that was given to us, that have those restrictions. So it's not going against state law based on one county attorney's opinion, which is what a lawyer's job is to do, is to interpret the law. It doesn't mean they're correct. So other counties in Colorado have deemed that it is legal to restrict their membership to unincorporated members only. My issue with city members sitting on this board, this commission, is that the rules that they're making do not apply to them. So therefore, we have people making comments such as, "You're overreacting." Why do they think that? Because those rules don't apply to them. So they're not representing the people because they already have a pre-notion in their head that it's not a big deal. Whatever passes here is affecting thousands of people's lives. It should affect yours too if you're gonna vote on it. That's
So,
my opinion.
Let me just say something. First of all, it doesn't matter because it's up to the county commissioners. So this conversation can move forward quickly. We have no say. We all understand that, right?
Then what are we doing here?
We're revising our bylaws to be correct. We can't legislate to the board above us. We can't require them to require certain membership. The public can discuss it with them, but that's not something we can contain within our bylaws. We all understand that, correct?
We can discuss it though, which is what we're
So
doing.
on the discussion, I totally disagree that it doesn't affect. For example, I live in the city of Cedar Ridge. Every rule we make affects me because I work mostly in the county. I build houses all over the county and I've taken that bias out of my judgment here. And when restrictions have become more difficult for us to deal with, I'm sometimes I've voted against my interest personally because it may have been better for the county. So they certainly do affect us, the rules we make it here, even if we live in the city. We all drive through the county, we buy in the county, everything is.
Pay taxes to the county.
Pay taxes to the county, we're certainly affected. And myself is specifically, I work mostly in the county and I own land in the county too. So the land I own is certainly also affected by the rules we make here. So just because someone lives in the municipality doesn't make it that they're hands off on the county deal.
As we heard earlier, it directly affects them though. You might drive through the county, but it's not directly affected.
Every day from Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, plus the weekends when I'm working
And
too,
yet
it
you still
affects me.
choose to live in a city that has rules and regulations that keep you all
Sure,
nice
but
and
I'm
tight.
affected by the rules. And the point is, I do think we could move this conversation forward in the interest of time, because this isn't something, we all understand that this isn't something we can put in our bylaws. We would be out of compliance.
And I wasn't opening up the debate. I was just putting in my 2 cents, as was everybody else.
Okay.
David? Did you have any?
Oh, I just was gonna say, I agree with Tom and Tate. If you're a resident of the county or a municipality, you're also a resident of the county, either way.
I agree.
And so I think the statute's clear, and I think, as Tate pointed out, a member of this board is affected by what goes on in the county every bit as much as they are, if they live in the county versus live in the city. I'll use my own example. I've lived in unincorporated Delta County for 28 years. In February of this year, I moved into the town of Bandy. So I've been in town for 2 months. But I think I probably have as much experience in county land use, and I deal with it all the time, and I dealt with it in my career, that I have a lot more to offer than somebody who moved here 1 or 2 years ago. And that's why I don't see that makes any difference whatsoever. But again, I think the county is, the state statute is there, and the commissioners, they'll make the decision. But the bylaws should probably be consistent one way or the other. Either there's nothing in there, or it's going to be consistent with what the commissioners say.
Okay. I'm gonna close this unless we have any.
Do we, okay, so I guess the answer that I'm thinking is the draft that Carl has prepared is okay with me, because we're leaving the membership of into the land use code, which just states the county. We're not dealing with it in our bylaws, okay? Is that, I don't know if we need a motion and a vote.
No, I think we would
No.
need motions if we're gonna change what's up here. So if, for example, we wanted to keep it, we'd probably need a motion to unstrike it.
Well, Mr. Chair, if you want, just as we're moving through, if there are questions about certain sections, you could take a straw vote, not like a vote on the whole thing, but just of that item. At the end of this, it's still required that the planning commission take 2 weeks to consider any of the changes. So whatever is discussed and ultimately changed, there would need to be 2 weeks in between before you actually vote on the final language. So, however you like to go, we could just keep going?
Yeah, keep moving.
Okay.
Lane, I'm sorry.
I was just going to make a comment that Tate is a very valued member of this commission because of his experience working throughout the county. And I would hate to see him excluded just because he happens to live in the city of Cedar Ridge. Like I said, he's a very valued member, and I would hopefully retain him.
Sure. Oh, and lastly, Cindy, do you have any comments on this? I'm sorry to keep forgetting, but I did remember you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I believe that the statute is very clear. I think that if we live in Delta County, I, for one, have a business in the city, and I have 2 residents as well as a county piece. And I think, I think the statute is very clear the way it is of us being in Delta County.
Thank you.
like to remember that we're representing a lot more people than just the ones that come and talk to. I mean, there's 30-some thousand people in Delta County, and you gotta keep that in mind, you know, it gets in here and it gets hammered from the certain individuals. But I think our job is to look at everybody, not just who's here.
Are you?
Sure.
Well put. Thank you.
Yes, I am. Yep.
So, Mr. Chair, so then also that, I guess, also applies to the associate members, because that's the same topic. And so that is the reason for the edit is in the land use code, subsection E of the planning commission discussion talks about the board of county commissioners may appoint one associate member of the planning commission from each county commissioner district. Each associate member shall be a resident of the county, and in the event any regular member is temporarily unable to act due to absence from the county, illness, interest, or et cetera, they may be taking place in temporary disability by an associate member designated for that purpose. So the edits here are trying to go beyond what's in the land use code. So that's the language that is remaining in here. So are there any questions on that additional language relative to associate members at this point? Seeing none, attendance. The last sentence was moved because it was more applicable to voting. If a commission member misses a meeting, he or she shall abstain from voting. That's addressed in section 7.1. I did add section 5.3. I just took the liberty to do this because it was a conversation funding. So this also incorporates things that the planning commission has addressed for the last couple of years. There was one meeting specifically talking about remote access, Zoom in particular. So I took a stab at trying to have something in there that reflected what the planning commission, where you landed on in that regards. There's more detail in section 6.3. The idea here is to recognize that, you know, since 2019, things have changed and think more things are done remotely, and Zoom has made that possible. Section 5.4, removal from the commission. I removed this point about missing 3 consecutive meetings that really wasn't being held to, and it's up to you as a commission whether or not you want to have unexcused absences accounted as a reason for removal from the commission. It's not required. The language that I did put in, and you could delete this whole section, but I did add, because there was comments kind of in both directions, the planning commission may recommend removal of a member at any time with a vote of not less than 8 members, including associate members. So what that's trying to capture is if there is an issue with the planning commission, that you would need to make a recommendation to the board. It's not, you know, the way it was worded before, there really wasn't an avenue, and that try to be specific as far as that it needs a super majority type vote. 8 members out of the commission would need to vote on that. And that would include associate members because it affects associate members. So I think that language is worth discussing if there's any questions or comments on that, because it is very, very different from where we've been.
How do we feel about this?
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I know this may have centered somewhat around the term misconduct. But nowhere, if I've missed it, please let me know, but I didn't see anywhere, any place where we specify what the conditions of misconduct is. From a human resources standpoint, if you don't have that spelled out and acknowledged by every member on this board, then they're null and void. There is no misconduct if we haven't defined what our misconduct will be. I'm a little bit worried about may recommend removal of a member at any time. What's the justification of doing that? Why would we override a board of commissioners appointed person just because we can? doesn't there need to be something more solid in there about why they're being removed from the board or recommended removal from the board pending the commissioner's decision?
Right, so we don't remove anybody. All we can do is make a recommendation since they're appointed by the board is what that sort of follows. If, yeah, we're not removing anybody.
But we can recommend to.
That's all we can do.
But
That's
this
all we can
says
do
with a vote of not less than 8 members.
out of 11.
That's a pretty high.
That's pretty high standard.
So you're saying 8 have to vote and then it's majority there or? is
No,
it-
it's 8 out of
You
11.
have to have everybody.
You
there
have
to-
all the members, excuse me, out of 12, right? 9 plus 3. I'm sorry, I can't count. So
12.
these includes associate members. So
Gotcha.
you've got a
So everybody's
total
gotta be there.
of
Seven,
everybody would have to vote.
I don't love this personally. I don't know if we need this.
Thank you.
I think,
I was ready to delete it, but there were some comments about having this in, but if you do want to keep it in, I think Commissioner Clark made a good point, that the professional performance is in section 13 and may want to reference that.
Does anyone feel strongly if they want to leave it in?
No, there's no comments during this period. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the commissioner should handle it.
Yeah.
Leave it on there.
How
Put
does
it in there.
How is it brought to the commissioner's attention?
I would assume they know what's going on.
Well, they don't.
I wouldn't
They
assume
don't.
that.
Yeah, I think
Robbie
if
there filling in over there.
maybe there's.
Has to be a reason.
Right, I agree with you. I think there should be, but if you just reference the land use code that says removal for misconduct, non-performance, or ineligibility upon written charge in public hearing, I guess we wouldn't even need the written charge in public hearing. We just make a recommendation if it meets, I don't have a problem with the super majority vote and whatnot, but there probably should be a reason or something.
Definition for misconduct.
Do we want to put it in 13 then, if that's where our standards are? Kind of like, here's how you need to operate. If you don't meet these, then there could be.
I mean, there could be a lot of reasons.
I think
We could have, voting with bias, we could have conflict of interest reasons. So there's gotta be an avenue to bring attention to the board for some sort of recommendation that, the rest of the command.
If the recommendation was going to be made, they'd have to, a reason would have to be stated at the time.
Sure.
Then the county board of commissioners would decide whether it was a valid or invalid.
Then maybe let's add language, like Mr. Clark says, that makes it specific.
Yeah, but if the
They're not
board
gonna be able to do
changes,
that.
if the board changes, then you have to do that. Or is it the board at the time declares that forever?
No, just saying that they can be removed, not at any time, but with reasons.
It'd be hard to guess every instance, if we were legislating on our own, or not legislating, if we were
I will tell you, this
voting
is-
on our own interest, for our own interest, and if we have a project coming, that would be.
Could you hold yourself? This is not a public hearing right now. Because I can't hear him when you're talking.
We can't hear you at all. most of the time anyway.
Well, then maybe ask her to not talk.
Can we hold off, folks?
Maybe that's a
We're gonna keep it here.
You could have in your
TK.
list, and then you
TK.
could remove me from the meeting.
Further comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I come from a military background. Military is spelled out everything you can and cannot do.
Yep.
There's no loose ends. And if you cannot pin misconduct on a specific point, then that doesn't exist. So I'm just saying to protect ourselves, who's to say that 8 of us won't gang up on somebody and say, I want to remove, well, we tried that once with you. I want to remove 2K, but,
That's a little.
on
out of
what
line,
basis?
Jesus.
There has to be something that you have to go back to as your basis.
Speak for yourself on trying that once already. Right? I don't like that comment.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's not,
Just caught
don't,
my
don't
eye.
speak for me, all right?
So let's I'm gonna take a straw poll. Who wants to remove this language from this?
Remove what?
Remove this sentence. Great, there's 2 of us. Then we're gonna need to adjust it then. So,
What, why? Just because Matt believes we need to.
Suppose
Take a
not.
vote.
No, because there's more than one person here who just.
Well, let's
raised their
vote.
hand.
Why don't we vote and then we'll see who agrees.
So, I mean, I don't know that you can make a comprehensive list, military list,
No.
why people should be removed or not removed.
You couldn't dream up all the crazy
Misconduct
stuff that
sort of
happens.
does it,
No.
and there's judgments to be made about that.
And it's important to.
The county commission.
All we would be doing is recommending an action. It's not, it's 100% up to them to make the decision.
As long as we can spell out why we think that this warrants misconduct.
Yeah,
We can do that.
I would
So we need a
assume so.
definition of misconduct.
I think it'd be pretty loose if we're ever fought in court.
I'm not.
Right now, it appears that the county commissioners can remove anybody for any reason.
At any time.
That's-
And I'm saying,
They have. the
I don't
authority.
want that, I don't want them to remove anybody without our recommendation. I'm sort of, we're sort of taking that authority away from them, although we're giving them the final say. Right now, it appears that the way it's written is they can remove somebody for those reasons, misconduct, non-performance, or ineligibility. And I'm saying, we don't want you to remove anybody unless we make a recommendation to
We
remove.
say no our opinion.
Right.
That's what they're getting at.
And we need a minimum of 8 of 12 to make that recommendation. I do understand what you're saying as far as context of why. I don't know that this is a equivalent of what some of the military boards you've served on, because they've got a little more history than us. And I think it is gonna be sort of general. I don't think I trust myself to not just make a recommendation or gang up on somebody
Well, I know
just
too,
because,
but
just because I think I can get 8 votes to remove somebody. I wouldn't do that.
But these are not labor laws.
If
I mean,
anything,
these are matter of serving in public office. We all serve at the behest of the county commissioners. They could remove any of us at any time for anything.
Just like a commander general would move anybody he wants. Everybody has to have.
So do we want to keep it as is?
so if anything,
That's
it
my
should-
opinion.
I
Just
think
leave
that
it alone.
does
Leave it like
give
it
a little
is.
more clarity added, because the planning commission may recommend removal of any member at any time with not a vote, not less than 8 members, including associate members, but that the associate members and the rest of this document have to only vote according to the bylaws, which stipulate that there has to be a member of the district missing.
No, they have some other powers, like in voting for office. Associate members have power for that. So we've actually added some powers to associate members,
Okay,
which I think is good.
sure.
And so this would be another power of, you get to have a say, and if you want a member removed. David?
Perhaps this 5.4, you just say the planning commission may recommend removal of a member at any time with a vote of not less than 8 members, including associate members, for reasons set forth in 6D C of the land use code.
Great.
That gives a little bit of direction.
Sure.
You just don't do it on a whim. You don't do it for any reason, but it's got to fall within this language, which is vague, but misconduct or eligibility. And then it's a recommendation to the county commissioners, and if they agree or disagree, that's their business. But at least, as TK says, we have some recommendation. It just doesn't happen without a reason.
I agree with that, David. I think that's what we're, and I think it ties it into what Matt is saying.
Right.
We're tying it into what the land use code says.
Well, it's noted here in the comments.
This is.
6D2C. The planning commission, they say in the land use code, removal for misconduct, non-performance, or ineligibility.
Yeah,
On written charge.
that makes sense to tie to that.
We're just gonna recommend it. It doesn't, commissioners, it's still their authority.
Victoria, Hardy?
I would just like to point out that in this land code, there are no definitions to what those are. And when I had written charges put on me, it was for non-performance of duty for abstaining from a vote, which in our bylaws, I legally had to do because I believed there was a conflict of interest. So because there was no definition of non-performance of duty, there were members on the commission that recommended me for removal for those reasons. without any knowledge of what that actually was. There was nothing about misconduct rather than the fact of
It's
I was
untrue.
disruptive.
I actually told
Steve.
you.
Steve,
So it said, basically that I had non-performance of duty for following my legal duty of this commission. So I think that having definitions would be, if we're gonna implement this, as well as not at any time, but in the public's eye, because everything was done behind closed doors, and that violates open meeting laws in Colorado. So I don't think any time is appropriate. I think at a public meeting, a regular commission meeting is more appropriate. And I think that if we are to implement anything like this, there should be even vague definitions of what those are.
So
understand.
maybe the recommendation is, Victoria, can you come up with something different?
I like that.
I mean, we'll be at this more than one meeting. Can we just move past this and say, you draft some language that you think works? I think I'm hearing that you're not against removal, you just don't like the conditions that we've agreed to, that have been discussed tonight. I don't think anything.
No, wait.
One second, Steve,
You're all
one
talking
second.
and I can't get to talk. All right, I tried to say something earlier. The assertions made by Victoria are wrong. I was at that meeting. I gave some facts about what she did that night, and we were all present.
Steve, are we talking about Victoria right now? Or are we talking about bylaws?
We're talking about her assertions that nobody gave any reasons
Okay,
for removal.
okay,
She gives false assertions
Okay.
about that. That's what I'm
we're
saying.
gonna move forward.
So we could add that in our review, that we were 2 weeks if we wanted.
Well, again, yeah, Victoria, could you do that?
We
You have
need
a
to add-
sense of what you want to say. I want to make sure we get a chance to review what you're thinking.
I'm putting in my opinion. Obviously, I have no power.
No, I'm asking you to,
Sure.
I'm asking you to rewrite this.
So
I want you to.
I don't think that that needs to be added in. I raised my hand when I wanted to remove it. So I don't think that should even be in there. I think everyone should have rules of conduct and we should follow those rules. We should be ethical, we should be honest, and we should follow the laws, which are black and white. That's what I think. I don't think we should, and if we,
Ethical. I like that, ethical, that's good.
Let's start with honest first.
Yeah, honest is good too. Let's
Yeah.
go on honest, let's do it.
All right. Well, what did we edit on that? We did have a,
David had a
we're
recommendation.
gonna point to the
My
land use code.
suggestion was just
Slide into six.
for the
60C.
ground, yeah, just reference back to 6D2C of the,
We're
that
okay.
gives some parameters on what you're looking at, if you're gonna.
How do we feel about adding public meeting rather than anytime?
I don't think so. I like what he's saying. My opinion.
That's one bylaws function just for us.
One vote out of all.
It would have to be a public meeting because it's
Yeah, it has to
voted.
be public.
Okay.
It can't have
That's
a
implied. You
closed
can't-
door meeting.
so
But
can we
it's not a public
specify
hearing.
it?
He's talking about, are you talking about public hearing?
No,
I
just,
don't think that
I
was a closed door meeting.
don't think, yeah, no, we can keep it as
I
this.
think what we're insinuating wasn't a closed door meeting, so.
Well, this is, we're talking about going forward, how it should be.
Let's do exactly what we did last time. I like that.
I like what Dave's recommending.
So-
Yeah, let's put it to a vote, adding the pointing to the land use code.
Okay.
All those in favor of that addition, just raise your hands. And those against. Okay.
Cindy,
Oh, and Cindy. Cindy, raise your hand.
I have my hand up. I,
Thanks, Cindy. Did you have any comment on this?
you know, I've been on a lot of different boards and I have to tell you that a recommendation is not the same as a removal. And I think that we should all be able to speak openly about something and make a recommendation with valid reason and detail. And that it shouldn't be felt like a gang up type of thing. And that again, the Board of County Commissioners are the ones who decide this at the end, who is actually on the board and who's actually removed. So I was fine with the removal section, but I would also be open if somebody has something different on how they would like to word it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, maybe if I could also just add, so at the end, it would be for reasons set forth in the land use code. I don't know that I want to specify the section because that could change with an amendment.
Sure.
But as I had mentioned earlier, section 13 does talk about professional performance. So maybe also include and/or section 13 of these bylaws. Because I think that's where you're gonna get into more of that detail that you were talking about.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, moving forward,
Okay.
Rewrite it and it'll come up.
it's gonna come up again, yeah.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
vote was just a preliminary
we're
vote
just
to
gonna
get
get to
language.
it.
out.
we'll do whatever, the way, like I did with the land use code, if there's changes to this red line, I'll highlight it so you can see where the changes were from the previous changes.
Great.
Okay. Section 5.5, 5.6 are addressed in the land use code compensation. The board has established that in the land use code as well as reimbursement. So if there's any desire to keep those, otherwise I would recommend deleting those. Section 6, regular meetings. The regular meetings of the planning commission shall be scheduled by the commission and staff each February for the following calendar year, and then refers to section 6.4 of when those meetings occur, when and where. Staff may cancel a regular meeting for lack of official business for the commission to review or due to holiday demands. This is effectively how we've been operating. It just gives a little bit more clarity to it, I believe. Again, open meetings. Meetings of the planning commission, including site visits and work sessions, shall be open to the public. The purpose of the statute is to allow the public to observe, not necessarily participate. Public participation in planning commission meetings shall be as follows. There's public comment. That can be an item on your agenda for the ability for public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. There are public meeting items, which are your business items. That can include work sessions, meeting minutes, where the public may attend and listen, but will not be afforded the opportunity to speak. And then public hearing items are noticed and open for public comment. So I took this language off of the agenda effectively, that as we've been operating the agenda. Public comment is not required as far as items not on the agenda. I did include it in here. It's something that's been on the agenda before. So I have it in here. So there's that ability to incorporate it into your agenda if you so desire. A commissioner may request opening an item for comment. The chair shall have the discretion to afford public comment where not otherwise required, except for an executive session. Commissioners only with selected staff may participate in the executive session. Again, just that clarity relative to executive sessions function differently than an open public meeting. And that's typically with legal counsel. We wouldn't be having an executive session without legal counsel.
Would it be possible to add language into a commissioner may request an item open for comment, that we might do a vote on that, so that it's not completely in the chair's discretion, just that we'll, as a majority, be able to decide if we want to hear the comments or not?
I like that.
Okay. So effectively, if you as a commissioner wanted to open something up to the public, that you could make that motion, and if the vote passed, then it wouldn't necessarily just be up to the chair. Is that the idea? Okay.
And that's during that meeting. We're not talking about, we have a clause in here that says future meetings, subjects for future meetings, any.
Right, that would be like on your agenda, commissioner comments and whatever, you can ask for things to be put on a future agenda that's not open for discussion because it was not on the agenda. But what I understand is Commissioner Turner is saying that something's on the agenda that isn't otherwise open for public comment, that a commissioner can ask for it to be open for comment, for public comment, and then it would be up to the vote of the commission to do that.
Similar to how I opened up public comment prior to this work session.
But you're asking that we'd have a motion and a second on it, right? Is that where, I just want to be clear. So if somebody says, hey, I want to open this up to a public, and you don't get a second, then it doesn't. Is that fair? Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
Okay.
But this is on individual items, which is different than what you did. You open up in a meeting. Think if anybody wants to talk. This is item specific.
I mean, it's good to have it in there if I get power hungry or whatever, and you guys want to hear from the public.
So part of the idea here is to have the chairman have some powers to really run the meeting.
Sure.
To run it efficiently, effectively.
Sure.
And not be encumbered.
But I think if the majority of the board would like to
Yeah.
hear from the public, so be it. Yeah.
An item.
I don't see.
An item that
how
would
much
not
volume
otherwise be
any
open.
public should-
I don't think it's a bad idea either.
Okay.
Because we,
So
so go to a vote.
He'll rewrite that and we'll review it again after the rewrite.
Okay. Section 6.3, remote access, or do you want to get input from Cindy or some key for?
I did text her and said, speak up if you.
Okay.
You know.
Section 6.3, remote access. As a general practice, planning commission meetings will be broadcasted on Zoom where public can listen to meetings. On public meeting items, it will be the discretion of the chair. The public is allowed to speak. On public hearing items, public can speak, but using Zoom is at their risk if there is a problem with the power or technology. Took this language from planning commission minutes where we were talking about the Zoom access, recognizing that sometimes technology doesn't work. Power goes out like we experienced in that one meeting. Well, twice in one meeting, yes. So is there any?
It's a bit clunky for bylaws, but.
We shouldn't designate a single vendor, and Zoom is a vendor.
Good point.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Cindy. Am I allowed to address a comment on this? Okay, so I first of all would like to address some of the items that I heard from the public that I did not know was actually happening until I actually had Zoom myself. I've had a couple of situations where a family member has come down with COVID, and of course I didn't want my other planning commission members to be exposed to that. But different people talk at different levels, and I can tell you that I'm really glad that I've attended a couple of meetings by Zoom, because now I know some of the public comments when they say it's hard to hear some of the planning commissioners as they're speaking. So I think that I can bring back some really good information about what I've experienced. But on the other end, I would also like to say that the technology of being able to access by remote and the way that it's set up. Yes, as we have technical difficulties from time to time with power outages, it is really a great way to access a meeting and be involved and have your input put in. So I do want to thank you very much for that.
But we don't want to encourage members to attend in Zoom, right? We've talked about that. We want you to be here.
I think so.
And the Zoom would be a
Sort of an alternative.
Exactly. And these last two times, that's what this has been. So I am almost every time in person and early, but these last two times being remote has been by Zoom has been very helpful, and I appreciate that.
I think it should be there.
Yeah, I don't know if we're encouraging anyone to attend, because as we've seen, you know, when you attend, it's hard to get your 2 cents in, so. Not to decentivize it, but.
So the remote access is really dealing with public comment, not on the planning commission members.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, my question is to make sure we're not in violation if we have software, Teams, whatever those other ones are, Zoom, that we're not gonna get in trouble if the technology fails. We're stating right out front, it's really their risk, because we have lost it more than once, and I've been cut out of a meeting for the same reason.
You know how much fiber they're ripping in the ground around here too? It's great.
Okay.
Okay,
Just
so
one
we're
last
gonna,
thing.
we're gonna rewrite that without Zoom in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I would also really love to see the majority rule comment in this section, where if the commission wants to hear the public speak by majority, that they can vote on that and to take, put more power amongst all of us rather than just the chair deciding.
I'm okay with that too.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Rewrite. Maybe I'll combine that with the previous one, and so it's all together. I'll work on that. Meeting location, tried to clean this up a little bit as a general practice. Commission meetings will be held on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. Meetings of the planning commission shall be held here. Notwithstanding that, the planning commission meetings may be also scheduled at and held at other locations in Delta County to meet the convenience of the commission, the board, the staff, and the public. Again, that's how we've been functioning. So if there are any changes to that, comments? Not special meetings.
Just a quick question on that one.
Yeah.
So we typically publish our agenda, how recently before the next meeting?
We try to get out a week ahead.
I guess with the change of location, if we could maybe specify that they'd have a little bit more of a public notice, because if everyone's getting used to us solely being here, they're not gonna be looking for if we're moving locations.
I don't think we need to, I mean, a week ahead should be plenty of time to get from here to Hotchkiss.
But we're
Well,
not
if-
really gonna pick another meeting spot unless we do it in a meeting.
I don't think we're going
So
to Hotchkiss.
it'll automatically be 2 weeks, because it'll be in the minutes.
If I
Go ahead.
if I may,
Sure.
under 6.7, the annual meeting, that's when we set the calendar. The idea would be to also set where the meetings are going to be. So what we did when we were meeting in Hotchkiss was we said the second meeting of the month, which was in the North Fork, the fourth meeting of the month was in Delta. And then because of technical difficulties, we changed that. So now it's in Delta. If we were to move it, it would be a special meeting because we've set the calendar for it to be here. This is allowing that to happen, but that would need to be done publicly to say we're gonna do a special meeting.
Okay,
Or-
so that's
and
what
then
I'm
we
saying
would put
about
that
the
notes
2
out.
weeks. There will be at least 2 weeks notice if we're gonna change location.
Right. Okay,
You won't get told the night before to go somewhere else, I promise.
might need a reminder where to go, but we did have that problem. We're going
We've
to
had some
different
issues.
places. So special meetings, rather than staff calling special meetings, changed it for the chair to be able to call special meetings. Commission members may also propose special meetings as a matter of part of the agenda business with support of 3 commission members. So that hasn't changed. Here, we shall send notice of a special meeting at least 3 days in advance. Again, we try to get agendas out at least a week ahead. That's just been our practice. So if we want to change the 3 days, maybe that's a conversation.
Could you just explain the last sentence in this?
The last sentence
Staff
being,
notice to
staff
commission
notice
members?
to commission members of a special meeting is not required if the time and place of a special meeting has been established in a regular meeting at which all commission members are present. So say we had this meeting tonight and the commission decided to have a special meeting in Hotchkiss in 2 weeks, we wouldn't need to notice that separately. We would just put it out with the regular agenda. It would be a special meeting because it is a different location than what was established in with the calendar. Is that?
I'm just sort of following Victoria's thing. Shouldn't we be saying, and that special staff notice, let's see, special meetings shall only be notified or only happen if it happens in a regular meeting.
I'd agree to that. I feel like 3 days.
Meaning if we're gonna need a special meeting, we gotta bring it up at a regular meeting. I would not 1 week later.
With all the mic thing and nobody can hear and stuff, that would only be like if the venue doesn't hold the people or something. I mean.
Well, if they had a fire in this building, we had to go
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Obviously, that would do it, but, I mean, we can't, there's a lot people can't hear and we're kind of getting this thing lined out, so I don't think we ought to go somewhere else and start over.
Again, we'd only do it if there was an agreement in a regular meeting to move it.
What would be an example of a special meeting?
200 people.
Like a subcommittee for impact fees.
Well, a special meeting would be on a date that isn't your normal meeting date that's part of your calendar. It would be at a different location that's not part of your calendar.
Like a field trip?
I'm sorry.
Field trip.
It could be a site visit. That would be a special meeting. Yes, that could be an example. Sorry, Victoria, you had,
To be a special meeting, it wouldn't have to be both, just one or the other, right? So it could either be not on your regular day or it could be somewhere else.
correct.
Okay.
So you bring up a good point with the site visit. If we are evaluating something and we've all expressed in the past that we want to go to a commercial entity, it's not open to regular business. Accommodations have to be made, but you may not have 2 weeks to make those accommodations.
But we would be saying that in a regular meeting.
How do you know? We wouldn't have gotten the agenda for, a week in advance.
I'm not following you. How would we be talking about some applicants?
You get an agenda
Right,
for,
30.
1 week in advance. And a bunch of people have reached out to Carl, said, hey, I'd like to visit the site. He says you can't.
You're saying
Do that.
before the next meeting.
I don't
Yeah.
think we
And
just-
I'm saying we've got to go to the next meeting
One time.
and then say we want to have a site visit. So it's got to be discussed in the public meeting, in a regular meeting, and then we would have a site visit so that it could delay the hearing. It could delay the hearing.
Right. But what we're wondering, I think what you're saying is, could we not delay it? Could we call a special
Why should we have
meeting?
to delay
That puts
it?
too much weight on these guys. I mean, they're working to get this stuff done. and
Yeah, that's a pretty rare occasion that it
it's
happens.
just Table or work it through those little one circumstances at that time and let them keep doing what they're doing.
We've had people want to visit, commercial enterprise and it was closed for business to, close the public for safety concerns. Right, and so,
So any member is entitled to go visit a site that's an applicant on their own without having to do a special meeting. I think this is talking about a group
okay.
meeting and I don't, if there was that much interest for us to see it as a group, I go back to Palinja Holdings. They had a group meeting there. It was notified and scheduled and was put on the docket and it would delay it, but in those circumstances, we'd all know that there's gonna be a lot of justified.
So
Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think it's just fair to the public because 3 days, I mean, they're not gonna know that we're having a special meeting in 3 days. That's barely enough time for us to maybe fit that into our schedules. So I just think that at the regular meeting, it's super transparent, it gives everyone enough time to plan for it. Just think that's.
Okay.
I think the sentence there as far as the 3-day advance notice is so something could come up as an urgency that the planning commission has to meet and act on an item that wasn't discussed at a previous meeting. We need to take care of the business before the next regular meeting. This is saying that it would have to be at least 3 days notice. It doesn't happen, hasn't happened since I've been here. But it could happen, probably more at the board level than the planning commission level.
I guess I wouldn't call it a special meeting, call it sort of an emergency. I mean, I just don't want to get into the fact that we're calling, I don't know. I see what you're saying and I agree. If there's some such a situation that's really unusual,
We're handcuffing ourselves a little bit, but who cares?
I don't think it's happened, but I think having the language there should have happened.
So leave the language as it is
So
or
rewrite.
change.
Still that we would have special meetings with notice and a regular meeting, and then special meetings could be with 3 days notice. I don't know how to do it, but we're gonna rewrite that and review it again.
We'll review it.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Any other input on rewriting that or
Good luck.
thanks?
Probably making this less complicated.
6.6 minutes, proceedings of all meetings shall be recorded as an audio record and shall be available to any interested party upon reasonable request. Written minutes of regular meetings shall be made only as detailed motion minutes reflecting specific dispositions on applications and other matters requiring commission action. There should be no minutes or record of an executive session item. Again, that's how we're operating. The only thing was to make it clear that executive session does not have a record. Yeah.
Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry.
based upon my experience with open meetings and executive sessions, if there's a discussion that occurs in the executive session, it should be electronically recorded, with the exception of legal advice. So if the only reason you go in is for legal advice, there's no record. if it's for some other reason, and I don't know that there would be a reason for planning commission, it's usually like personnel matters or something like that. There is an electronic recording that's not public, but somebody can go to court and try to open it up. But I guess to say no minutes of an executive session, you should probably say for legal advice,
Okay.
to
We
be
could just-
consistent with the open records
We
law.
could just reference statute there and then that would be clear
Right.
where where a recording is kept and where it's not.
Yep.
We have
Okay, yeah, that would work too.
yeah, I mean, we've got the specific statute right here and what's kept, so we could
Okay.
just reference
But
that.
the way this reads, it says there would be no
Right.
recording
Right.
of an executive session. I think that's contrary to the open records law.
Okay.
So we're gonna turn it on the table.
Thank you.
Section 6.7, annual meeting. The first regular meeting held in February shall be considered the commission's annual meeting. I've consolidated everything that was in here as far as for annual purposes. Election of officers, consideration of special projects, and consideration of the regular meeting schedule. The master plan, section 6.8.
Before you move on.
Yeah.
I wondered if the board wanted to consider bylaw changes at the annual meeting. If they do in fact govern how we run our meetings, do we want to look at them at the annual meeting?
We're saying, do we want to accept the current bylaws or are we asking for amendments? Changes.
Yep. At least have an item on the annual meeting, and if someone wants to change something up from the prior year.
Sure.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to open that up for discussion.
So consideration of the bylaws, that's good.
Yep, so that'd be similar to the master plan. Here, it suggested that there'd be May of each year, there'd be consideration of revisions to the adopted master plan. Rather than holding it just to one time of the year, the master plan may be amended at any meeting of the commission by an official action following a public hearing. Proposed amendments shall be given to each member in writing at least 2 weeks prior to the public hearing. Kind of follow the bylaws format in that regard, but not limiting it to just May of each year.
Does it need to be capped? I mean, we could be reviewing the master plan every meeting. I'm just throwing it out there. Do you think we need to have a cap on how many times we review it in a year?
You know, it doesn't really talk about reviewing, but it talks about amendments. So if you had a specific amendment, you could bring it to the table. We could get it done in 10-15 minutes. So.
And
Yeah,
I
I-
would have to, make a motion and get agreement.
So any change to the master plan has to be done with public hearing.
Yeah.
Public input.
I would say that reviewing the master plan, I've always thought is an important thing. It was done in 2018. And I would venture to say few of us revisit that. I do. But I don't know how many do. And that having some effort, because at some point we are gonna want to redo it. And having some effort at reviewing it along the way, to be refreshing ourselves about what it is and what it says. And it says a lot of things, by the way, about just what goes in the land use code, what's there, where the land use code came from. And so refreshing ourselves about that and the public could be helpful.
Do you want to put that on a calendar? Can we, it kind of seems like we would consider it in C under annual meeting consideration of the regular meeting schedule. Do you want to add a letter there that says consideration of a master plan review schedule?
Semi-annual, quarterly, or?
Yearly, I mean, it doesn't have to be.
I think it ought to be at
Best.
least
Yearly.
So effectively, that's consideration of special projects that you want to address in the year. It could be part of your annual meeting in February. Are there any changes to the bylaws? Are there any changes to the master plan? You know, you wanna consider.
Well, and then we can schedule some review sessions
Yeah.
where we go through it together as a commission.
I think we take sections and take a look at it.
Yeah.
There's only 3 of us remaining that were part of that master plan in 2018. So, for me, at least 2018.
I think it's kind of important to have kind of a full house when that's going on, too,
Right.
instead of like 4 people. I mean, that's, maybe I'll put something in there that we have to have at least a certain amount of people when that's going on.
To review them.
Get down to quorum.
We have to have a quorum anyway to be able to conduct this.
Yeah, but if we have 8 people, have 12 or whatever, I think we gotta have a little more than a quorum.
Yeah, but I don't know if we need to define that. We're typically going to have people, and then you could be an open hearing, could be big. Yeah, and the amendment would be a big deal.
We can't change it in one meeting.
Yeah. Be multiple meetings.
We'd have to go
Oh,
public
that's
hearing
city.
input.
Yeah.
What's that?
If we change it for amendments, we would probably open it up pretty widely.
Gotcha.
I would think. Maybe not, but I would think we would.
Yeah.
But revisiting it, reviewing it, to help us think of all of that and what we might want to do at some future point. I think would be very instructive and helpful.
When it's about time, it's 5 years. Cindy, do you have any comments on that?
No, I'm good.
Okay, next section is, speaking of quorum, identifies a quorum as being 5 members, so it's 5 of the 9 voting members, makes a quorum. The one thing that is changed in here is if a public hearing or meeting has been convened to a lack, has not been convened due to a lack of quorum, applications that require public notice shall be placed on the next agenda and will not be required to be republished with notice.
And I saw you had commented about notice and notification or publishing and notice. There's a
Right.
difference.
There was a comment that was, that republishing a notice is simple and fair thing to do. So I just put some detail as far as what is required for noticing. It's not meant to say we shouldn't renotice. We're not required to, because it's part of that hearing, that process that people would be presumably people would be following,
Right.
but maybe not. And so this would be an opportunity here if we wanted to be more specific and saying, while it's not required, we might want to put that in here that you want staff to renotice it if the item is moved due to a lack of quorum. The challenge there is typically the meeting's 2 weeks, and to get the notice, it would push that item back out for probably a month instead of that next meeting.
Right. So this is in an effort to move it forward.
Right.
Victoria?
Could we possibly state when that meeting will be at the meeting that's being canceled, as well as putting it on the next agenda? Because if we've shown up and the public's shown up, at least the people who were interested and that showed up, they would be aware of when the next one is happening right away.
I think that's included in our cancellation notice when we post that the meeting is canceled, that all items on the agenda are moved to the next meeting. I'll look at Kim and Kate because they've been posting those, but
Yeah, when we put up a cancellation notice, we put the date that was noticed. And then we put the next date that it was moved to, if we have it. If we don't, for some reason, then we put, it has been, or will be scheduled at a later date and time, and then we will let people know. We'll send notice out again if that is the case. But if we have a meeting date that has been set, we do put that in our cancellation notice.
So could we maybe stipulate to, if it says will be decided at a later date, that we will republish some sort of notice, because that as a notice in itself is not very informative.
I mean, we put that in there, we let people know that, but I mean, if you guys wanna add that in here, that's.
That's been our practice. If it's continued to a date uncertain, we renotice it. If
Yeah,
it's
2 weeks
continued to
prior
a
to the
date
meeting.
certain, even if there is a meeting and it's continued, if we say we're continuing to a certain date, we don't renotice it. But if we just say we're continuing it and there isn't a date, then we will have to renotice it.
That's awesome that we practiced that, but. if-
But you
if
want to see it in
stays-
here,
Yeah,
yeah.
if it stays, if we're all replaced or removed or whatever, they're gonna be following this, and I just think it would be really important to renotice the people that are gonna at least directly be affected. So if it's like an applicant hearing, just to notify the neighbors that showed up, if it's not just moved to the next meeting. If it's moved to the next meeting and that's stated and it's on the agenda, that's a little bit different, but if it was just to be decided,
Right.
I think it would be really
Well,
beneficial.
are we tying
So-
our hands by saying shall be placed on the next agenda? Because that's effectively saying we're not.
Well, that is standard though. If you don't have a quorum, so you're not having a meeting, all those items move to the next meeting. That's what that is trying to convey. For the items like what, I think what we're getting to in 6.18, continuance of an item. If a date and time certain is not specified, the matter is required to be noticed pursuant to the applicable regulations once a date and time is set. So we did try to cover that in 6.18.
Okay.
Did you?
Just be careful, we don't box ourselves in.
Right, noticing can be, it's a big deal.
So what I said was, you gotta be careful in bylaws, you don't box yourself in. So that's all I said. So it just, it's easy to say we will, but let's be careful. These are for the long term. Let's be careful not to box ourselves in. These guys are great at posting and moving it to the next agenda and letting people know. All I say when I say bylaws, let's not box ourselves into something that may not be in every situation practical. That's all I said.
Very good point.
Simplicity.
And actually, do these pertain to us since you're noticing as staff, whereas the bylaws are for the planning commission?
Well, but we're staff to the planning commission, so it's really how you want us to be acting on behalf of the planning commission for items that come before you.
So are we okay to keep this quorum, but I think what you're referring to is more of a continuance?
Yeah. I guess maybe we could combine those, or do they need to be separate sections?
But yeah, this just talks about quorum in general, and then it talks about the notification afterwards.
I like it when it's written.
Yeah, I think you can leave it.
Okay.
We could move the continuance of an agenda item to follow this so that it's right there
Okay.
following it,
Yeah, that'd
maybe,
be fine. Put it in 6 point.
rather than,
Also, the definition of quorum I saw earlier was docked out. So a quorum is just 5 members, but it doesn't matter which districts they're all coming from anymore.
that's correct. You have 9, you have a planning commission of 9, so a quorum is a majority, which is 5 people. Could be 3 from one district and 2 from another and none from the third.
And how does everyone feel about that? Because I feel like it's not quite accurate representation.
Show up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Some of our duties, right?
I mean, we had a meeting where the 3 from the North Fork and the associate came, but the associate still couldn't vote. And so I think we had to call someone to come in so that we could have 5 voting members. We could adjust that, but that would even further your concern for,
And while that's a concern, there's also a concern of being able to hold the meeting and have the items heard. So that's trying to balance.
that's right, the applicant has, as much of right to hear
right.
And the public neighbors who come.
this for the time and.
What about just on legislative matters? To have accurate representation from all districts?
For what?
Not on like the quasi judicial, not on applications, but just on like amending the bylaws and doing the master plan, just some kind of stipulation that we're gonna have some representation from all districts when we're doing more than just an application.
I think that's to Robbie's concern about boxing this in.
And you're
Having
gonna
a
have,
quorum,
you're gonna have
just
2
having a
districts,
quorum.
minimum. You have 2 districts minimum, because there's only 3 people on each district. So you're always gonna have at least 2 districts represented. Minimum. If you have a quorum.
We're all members of the county anyway, and we shouldn't have to worry about each individual district. We're not trying to discriminate against one area over another. We're just all members of the community.
Well
Yeah.
said.
I'd say just leave it the way it's written.
Okay,
I agree.
okay.
With the edit in it or without the edit? When you
The
say,
way that it is.
okay. Okay. 6.10, official action. Really, there isn't a lot of change here other than specifying voting members of the condition of the commission for an official action. To distinguish from associate members. 6.11, order of business. This reflects the order that the agenda currently is operating. Where we have the approval of the minutes and public meeting items up front. Then we have public hearing items, followed by department report, commissioner comments, and then adjournment.
Yeah, I'd like to make sure that personally, that the chair can reorder these without being in violation of anything. We did it tonight. I think we need to be able to do that.
Right.
I don't want to be boxed in by
That
that.
says unless otherwise ordered by the chair.
Yeah, it says it right there.
Okay.
Good call.
And that's why we have that,
works.
that first item on the agenda to,
I would just read.
I didn't read the whole thing. Sorry, I was paraphrasing.
No, I wrote my own comments maybe.
6.12 lays out the format for having hearings, administrative and public hearings, having one standard format. Having staff give the summary, questions from the commission to staff, presentation by the applicant, if there is an applicant involved, questions of the commission to the applicant, public testimony, final comments from the applicant is also known as rebuttal, final questions to the commission, either staff, applicant, or others present, which could include the public. There's questions of the public that have made comments. The public hearing's closed, the deliberation of the commission, and then the action. So with that, then the next section, the informal hearings, was deleted. 6.13, establishment of meeting agendas. No change from the current bylaws in that regard. Staff works with the chair on establishing the agenda. 6.4.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So any commission member may request that a specific matter directed related to commission business be included on the future meeting agenda. I just think it should be at least 2. I think you should have, if you want to put something on it, you should have just like a motion in a second.
I agree.
I think you need to.
I disagree.
I do.
I think any member ought to be able to put something on the future agenda.
Okay, well, that's what we're discussing. I guess I feel like we should be able to at least have 2 people
We're not
support.
looking for 8, we're looking for 2. I mean, it's not hard to get another person if it's. has any
We
legitimacy.
all ought to have some sort of power placing thing. I mean, there's an interesting discussion item related to what we do.
That we're eating all our time up though.
Well, it doesn't happen often. We have it now. It doesn't really happen.
And even if it's on an agenda, we can work through things.
2 people, only 2 people.
Why 2 people? Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
there's not a lot of support for that. We'll drop it.
So leave it as it
I
is.
support
Leave
that.
it as it is. I'm with Artie, but we're good. I'm good.
Does anyone else have a
Come up with
strong?
some doozies, man. I'm telling you.
I know, well, come up with some doozies and we'll deal with it.
Should be on there.
We get to change them every year.
You got a year to deal with me, dude.
Okay. 6.14, meeting procedures. This is an area that has a lot of change to it. Meeting procedures shall be determined by the chair, who may use Robert's Rule of Order for guidance where not otherwise addressed in these bylaws. All participants, commissioners, and public must be recognized by the chair prior to speaking. Members of the commission should direct all inquiries regarding legal matters, including but not limited to interpretation of state statute, to the county attorney. Commission members should not invite or solicit members of the public to express approval or disapproval in any form, verbal, clapping, etc. In addition, commission members shall not engage or enter into conversation with or towards the public during commission meetings. Certain situations may need attention during a meeting but do not require a motion. It is permissible to state a point during a meeting where the chair needs to handle a situation right away. Commissioners can declare a point of order to draw attention to particular rules, procedures, established practices, point of information, to present new information about the item being considered that had not been and should be included when considering the vote. This information should be presented in the form of a non-debatable statement. Point of clarification, to ask for clarification from something presented, such as in the staff report, to make better voting decisions. Once the point has been recognized and addressed as determined by the chair may resume the meeting. Continued debate may be deemed out of order by the chair.
So
This is creating more formality to the meeting. So that's for the discussion, for discussion.
Back to the paragraph, commission members should not invite or solicit members of the public to express approval or disapproval. That's not-
You got quieter with every word.
The one about not having,
Not talking to the public. For God's sake, don't talk to that public.
Approval or disapproval in any form.
hang on, I'm trying to make a point here. Actually,
Case in point.
I think it's in here at some point that we can turn to the public. We have a lot of smart people to come. And we don't always have the issues ourselves, and turning to the public for input on particularly on things like a conditional approval or limited use approval. Turning to the public and neighbors for those things are really important. And they may get there in their own comments, but they may not, so having that interaction is important. I think we allow for it in maybe other language in here, but I don't want to cut that off.
Thank you.
So do you want to strike that middle paragraph?
I would
Commissioner?
second that.
Yeah, so long as it doesn't become disruptive to what the commission is trying to
Exactly.
do.
Exactly.
But
It's-
welcoming the public's comments.
I've been in enough public meetings and with elected officials to know that they or we as appointed don't always have the full breadth of information and that smart people can really help. Understand.
Do you interpret this paragraph though as saying that we don't want public input?
No, I'm saying there could be a point at a meeting where we want to turn to somebody in the public
Which they do that right now.
and tell us about that, and I don't want to be curtailed
I think
doing that.
the chair should do that, or you could.
It should be through the chair.
Chair
That's what
does
this
it
is saying, is it should be done through the chair, not just a commissioner turning and having a conversation with the public. That's not part of the public meeting, part of the record.
Well, I would agree that one of us could say, Mr. Chair, could we have so-and-so
Yeah,
elaborate on that issue?
yeah, we've brought people up.
which
discussed
we
it.
just addressed earlier in this document. To make a motion to open for public comment.
We're saying no sidebars on the side here going on between commissioner and public.
I agree with that. I just don't want this to be interpreted that we can't somehow ask members of the public to comment on
The chair.
But it says up right above, all participants, commissioners and public must be recognized by the chair prior to speaking. So that gives them the right. You would just be asking the chair.
I think maybe it's a little repetitive then, because we already have the procedure for how you.
Right, I'm not I'm not saying we can't take it out. I'm trying to make sure Steve is comfortable that the public still would have the right to do it if they're recognized by the chair.
So I've heard a move to strike from Steve and a second from Victoria.
Well, I'm not sure,
No.
because I can't even find it again.
You're right, go back up.
I get lost.
6.1.
6.14, yeah.
6.14.
Previously 12.
Previously 12.
public comment right there.
No. Also, as a note, I'm gonna make a hard stop at 8 PM for this, so wherever we get to in the bylaws, we'll stop, and
Thank you.
we're gonna resume.
Where is it, what am I looking for? Because I'm lost.
I don't know.
What are you looking for,
Members
Steve?
should not invite or solicit members of the public to express approval or disapproval in any form. It's right there, e.g. verbal clapping, etc. Wow, that's what you're looking for.
That would be the time to look out for community for help.
Like he wants.
Yeah. Steve wasn't there. Talk about the county attorney.
I have a few more questions on this before we go.
Sorry. There you go. No, what about that?
Where is it? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about undermining the
Oh, yeah, yeah.
county attorney.
We'll
all the
get,
time.
we'll get
That'd be
there.
awesome. Considering the attorney.
We'll get there.
Let's start right away.
So Steve, do you have
Yeah.
any action? Reaction?
Well, clapping and all of that disruptive stuff is obviously not good.
So you want to keep that, but you want to
Should not
strike
invite or
the,
solicit members of the public to express approval or disapproval.
try.
Engage or enter into here it is. In addition, commission members should not engage or enter into conversation with or towards the public during commission meeting. I don't want that to be interpreted that we don't turn to members of the audience for further information.
So you want to strike the second sentence in that.
Or
paragraph.
add unless recognized by the chair.
So you're saying commission members less recognized by the chair shall not.
We have something in here later on that says that consultation with members of the audience. I thought I saw it.
So maybe you want to rewrite this, so we're not waiting. We're sort of stuck on your.
Where are you scrolling? Don't scroll.
That's my problem. I can't scroll and
Stop.
All right,
All right,
Scroll.
while Steve drafts, is there any other comments
I
on?
just want to be careful about that.
Sure.
All right. And maybe I need to think about it.
Look how TK is on the same
You
subject.
could make a simple statement that public input is welcome at the discretion of the chair.
And that's section
stating
6.17.
I mean, we're not here to like.
It says that.
Not take public comment.
Lane.
I'd like Carl to read that, I think it was the first sentence, when we talk about Robert's rules of order.
It's right up there too.
So meeting procedures shall be determined by the chair who may use Robert's Rule of Order for guidance were not otherwise addressed in these bylaws.
I'd like to put that in officially, may use Robert's, I don't think we need to be restricted to that.
That's what it says.
Right, that's what it was changing instead of Robert's Rule of Order shall govern. The chair, the chair may use Robert's Rule of Order for
That's
guidance.
cool, because we never follow them anyway.
Well, there's a lot of interpretations of Robert's rules too out there.
I've heard tonight, people make a motion, according to Robert's Rules of Order, you move, you don't ever make a motion, so we're not following them in.
So I guess my question is, are we doing that at each meeting? Are we really, because we're gonna bounce from using them one meeting to not meeting, it's
Discretion of the
If,
chair.
if we show
each meeting.
polite decorum
Each issue.
and respect each and every individual here, and only speak when recognized by the chair, that's all we need. And instead of people interrupting, over talking other people, you have to be recognized by the chair, and then you treat everybody as an equal with respect. Or do we need something more formal?
I'm not really saying we do. I'm trying to decide, are we going to, when we come to each meeting, is the chair gonna be deciding whether we're following those rules or different rules?
No, I think it should be like figured out and that's it.
Once a year.
No, wait. I think it's discretion of
Jump back
the
and
chair.
forth.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did it today where we had a public hearing. We came here and I said, hey, we're gonna have a discussion. We're gonna talk if you have something. And so I'll just,
And if you want to invoke Robert's Rules of Order, you have that right.
sure.
If you want to just make your own judgment about the correct way to have the procedures run, you could do that too. I don't think you want to make a blanket determination.
Victoria.
I think having it predetermined and written out specifically so that there's not any differences on a case-to-case basis would be a good thing to have. I think that parliamentary procedure, there are other options besides Robert's Rules of Order, but they are written out and specified. There are some that are just a couple pages long, but I think to leave it to the discretion of one person to jump back and forth between what they feel at the moment
What's the discretion of who we voted on?
is probably not the best way to go about it. Just to keep things running smooth and orderly is to have a specific set of laws, for example, to be recognized by the chair before speaking, and things like that, just so that we are all on the same page and there's no confusion. I mean, there are plenty of parliamentary procedures that are less than 10 pages long. I think it'll just keep it running smoothly. There will be less arguments if everybody's following the same set of rules. That's my take.
Well, I mean, I'll say, I like Lane's set of rules, which is you only speak unless you're recognized by the chair. If you agree to that, annually, weekly, bi-monthly, whatever it is, we don't need other rules and regulations.
I respect that opinion, but I
Gonna
just
leave now?
disagree.
So, and you could just strike the section about you using Robert's Rules of Order, but then you hamstring yourself.
Says May.
Says
Right,
May.
you say it's May, so, I mean, you strike it or not, it's.
Well, maybe we should be saying we're not gonna use them unless they're invoked by the chair. So we know going in, the minimum we're doing is recognizing that in order to speak, you've got to be recognized by the chair, which I just spoke out of turn, so I apologize. But, you know, I don't want to start getting into somebody else's rules, so we're just gonna say we're not gonna use them unless invoked by the chair. And that way we know where we are.
But you're talking like the chair invokes them at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that the chair can decide during a meeting.
Right.
If they want to, in fact, say, we're gonna do little Robert's Rules of Order right now to get through this issue. Or I'm gonna make a determination about Schrock, you shut up, and we're going on, which may be Robert's Rules of Order. But that's a chair decision and discretionary decision, item by item, whatever point during the meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's important that we recognize we voted the chair in for a specific reason, because nobody else wanted to. And so, you know, but so he has, or she have powers that to run the meeting a specific way. That we leave more discretion in there.
so again, we're saying we're not gonna use it unless the chair invokes them at any time in the meeting.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
So are we
I'm
changing,
okay with that.
are we changing any language?
Yeah,
What's here?
it doesn't, you don't need to change your language from what's proposed.
Victoria?
I think that we should at least consider between now and the next meeting, looking into parliamentary procedure. It's very helpful. It creates less confusion. It makes it fair. If there is some kind of, dislike from the chair to the commissioner that they don't want to hear it, it shouldn't be discretionary. It should be black and white. It should be written down. That's why I feel it'll keep it fair. It'll make sure it runs smoothly. It won't be on a case-to-case basis. It'll just be the same thing every time, which is fair and dependable, which is what the community wants in their local government, is fair, dependable, and just black and white. They'll know if we're breaking the rules. We'll know if we're breaking the rules. There'll be a certain set of rules that we follow, not just discretionary. We might use them this time, we might not. I might just tell you to shut up because I feel like it, or I might go to Robert's Rules and let the minority speak. I just feel like
I think we have
it wouldn't be as complicated as everybody's making it out to be. It's not a lot of reading. There's very short parliamentary procedure packets. Just to include those at the end of our bylaws so that we have a procedure to follow. I guess I'll recommend some of that before our next meeting so that you guys can see some examples of that, because it's really truly not that difficult. But that way it's always the same. It's consistent, it's fair.
Sure. Well, to that point, this is helpful. I know it's a little clunky again for bylaws, but it's helpful to at least, if we're talking about, I've heard from everybody that the training isn't that great. So at least we have a little bit more broken down here in the bylaws so that a commissioner at least can expect to know how to function in the meeting. Any final thoughts?
So before we finish on this, Victoria, can you prepare some of these other documents that other, whatever you call,
Yes.
laws and
procedures.
present them to us? We'll just keep this as an open discussion. And we'll certainly look at it again the next time because we're within 2 minutes of 8 o'clock and I want to see us be done.
Yes, and
that
also,
okay?
I just wanted some clarification, yes, to your question. Did we decide to scratch the second sentence of the middle?
We did not.
We haven't finalized this at all.
I haven't decided to keep it
Okay,
either.
We're gonna wait for you to bring some other information that you think we need to read.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any final thoughts? Before we adjourn?
We'll pick up, we're at 6.14 next time.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to this. Meeting is adjourned.
Please do something with the mic and several